Can one novel capture America? England has Shakespeare, Italy has Dante, Spain has Cervantes, but America, what is America's great literary translator? The truth is, nobody agrees. And maybe that's exactly the point. Maybe America is simply too vast, too contradictory, too wide, and it contains too many stories to be distilled completely and captured by one single writer in one single novel. As America celebrates its 250th birthday, here are 5 books that together can help us understand its origins, its promise, its contradictions, and the stories that it tells itself. The first book isn't a novel at all. This is The Federalist Papers by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. Now, I love a good biography as much as the next person. David McCullough, Ron Chernow, or Walter Isaacson, Joseph J. Ellis. There's some fantastic biographers about the founding and the founding fathers. But if we want to understand the origins of America, it's not just about reading about the founding fathers. We have to read them in their own words. And these essays really explain why America was designed the way that it was. The separation of powers, the checks and balances, federalism, of course, and that conviction, that very strange conviction given the time period that concentrated power is so dangerous that no matter who holds it, it's too dangerous to be in one person's hands. Without that, we can't understand America, and we can't understand the ideas that gave birth to it and ultimately made it what it will become. Now, of course, it's also difficult to understate the impact these principles would have on global history, on the French Revolution and European history that came out of that, on economic and cultural rise in different parts of the world, in Asia in particular, human rights, and the modern world. We see elements of this obviously going back to British values and biblical values and Enlightenment values, but America is kind of the prism through which all of these unassembled notions finally come together tangibly. So we have to look at this if we really want to understand global history. But what about Shakespeare? We could spend hours on this and related points, but we're still far from understanding the lived reality and the culture of America and the spiritual experience of America. To gain insights here, we of course need to read history, but perhaps even more importantly, we have to look beyond nonfiction. We have to go into the realm beyond historic principles and towards the spirit of America as it is captured by its greatest writings. Now, one work that it's really a collection of works, but one collection that really captures the spirit of America is Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. If the Federalist Papers kind of explains America's founding, I think Whitman goes further than perhaps any writer in capturing America's promise, that quintessentially American promise that ordinary people can have extraordinary lives, the value of democracy and dignity. And America is more than just a place, right? That it's a set of values. Now, Whitman, of course, he captures the ambitious, the optimistic, completely always reinventing itself side of America too. And one of the most beautiful lines is, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes." And we'll come back to that because that's really important, I think, to understand America. And of course, as we ponder Whitman, we are reminded of the importance of considering America spiritually, right? It's always been an uncommonly religious and uncommonly orthodox country at the same time. At its founding, Alexis de Tocqueville noted this, statistics note this today. So we have to understand these things. But the next book is really the first contender for the great American novel that I want to talk about. This book explores transcendent philosophy and so much more. I think that this is probably the strongest contender for the title of the great American novel. The problem is there is no one, in my opinion. The book I want to talk about is Moby-Dick by Herman Melville. Now, a lot of people know this book. They know that it's a whaling story. It's got a lot of depictions about the whaling industry, but it's really a novel about ambition and obsession and nature and science and madness. Captain Ahab's pursuit of the white whale, which is based on a real white whale, is really a metaphor for the extraordinary ambition that has always characterized America. It is enormous and complicated, and just like the country that produced it, very messy. Now, the sublime is explored so wonderfully in this novel, and I think the man versus nature and man versus self aspects of this really make this a great contender for the American novel. But there are others. The next one that I would offer up as a potential extraordinary contender would be The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. This is Twain's best novel. A lot of people love some of his other works, but Tom Sawyer is nowhere near as deep as Huck Finn. Twain did something very unique in his writing that no other writer had done. He gave America its voice, literary. Huck Finn is a boy that's forced to choose between society, between what's right and what his conscience tells him is right. And that tension between the individual conscience and societal conscience, societal expectations, it's super American, right? It's also one of the funniest books that's written too, very wise, and of course that distinct narrative voice that we get to experience in Huck Finn. I would say the last 50 pages of Huck Finn fall short. They fall a bit flat. And for that reason, it's probably not a novel that could be the great American novel, but it comes about as close as any. And this brings me to the fifth book. And honestly, this is where things get very challenging. I don't know what the fifth great American book could be. Or perhaps more accurately, I don't have a single book that I want to put in this category. After reading American literature for years, I am far from convinced that there is ever going to be a single great American novel. Maybe Moby-Dick or Huck Finn could come close. Maybe the most obvious contenders in my mind would be the Scarlet Letter. That has a very serious claim. I would say East of Eden has a much higher claim than maybe certain people give it. It's better than Grapes of Wrath. It's Steinbeck's best novel, in my opinion. Faulkner, of course, has many contenders, maybe Absalom. A lot of people might argue As I Lay Dying, and that would be another absolutely fair pick here. So those would all be obvious contenders. And then there are books that may not really be the great American novel, but they capture one particular aspect of the American story that is so essential with just an extraordinary force. So I'll just list off a few of these right now. Catch-22 for the absurdity of war. Invisible Man explores race and identity. The Great Gatsby, the American dream, or more appropriately, the fall of the American dream. The Catcher in the Rye is alienation and youth. Their Eyes Were Watching God is self-discovery. Also, the voice is very American. The Sun Also Rises explores the lost generation, an important period in American history. Blood Meridian, violence of the frontier, right? If we go to American theater, we have Death of a Salesman, we have Long Journeys, Day into Night, Streetcar Named Desire. There's so many other ones, right? Or American poetry, the works of Emily Dickinson or T.S. Eliot or Langston Hughes or Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen Crane, and of course Walt Whitman. There are so many contenders, so many stories in America. Maybe that's the point. Maybe there is no single great American novel because America itself has no single story. I love the founding of America. I love the promise of America and everything that it stands for. I love the astonishing successes of America that we see through American history, but America has never perfectly lived up to its own principles. And it has always contained these contradictory and competing values. America is the land of freedom, but also highly values order, individualism and community, faith, but radical skepticism must have a place, ambition, but also equality, idealism, but then also delusionment. And so we come back to Whitman, right? And one of the greatest American insights that he wants to say is America wants to ask, do I contradict myself? And its immediate response is the unflinching and strikingly confident reply, very well then, I contradict myself. I am large and contain multitudes. That's what Whitman is telling him about himself, but really it's about America. And that, to me, is how we have to read it, America. Everyone wants America to be one single, simple story, but the truth is, it's never going to be that. There are so many stories arguing for supremacy, fighting with one another. Today we see a country founded on universal principles that has spent 250 years struggling valiantly, but ultimately imperfectly, to live up to those principles. America is a country that is capable of extraordinary beauty and extraordinary success, but also extraordinary failure. Maybe America contains too many stories. Then again, maybe that's exactly what makes its literature so difficult to pin down, so extraordinary. So happy 4th of July, and for today's 250th birthday of these great United States. I just want to say, if you're American, know that the world's eyes will always be upon you, which is both a blessing and a curse. We may not always like to admit it, but America is and always has been a cultural, literary leader, as well as economically, spiritually, and other areas too. But its literature has been so influential, and I think will continue to be. But let me know what you think. If you had to choose one book that best captures America, what would it be? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your takes for the great American novel or the most important historical works to understand America. And if you'd like to explore more books like this, I'd love to have you join our book club, The Reading Room. Link is in Substack or in the bio or description. You can find as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy 4th of July, and I will see you in the next one.